Hi friends! This week I'm going to do another episode of my reverse coloring book. I wasn't actually sure about doing any more of these because I feel like I used up a lot of my ideas for them already. And I didn't want to just keep doing the same thing over and over. But there are some really kind of ugly and abstract pages in here, and I really want to challenge myself to finish this book. So let's get started. The first page that I'm going to do is this one. This is how it was in the book, and it kind of looks like a bowl of soup. But I'm actually going to turn it upside down, and then obviously it looks like a jellyfish. I'm going to start with these Ohuhu Fineliners to sort of block out my ideas on the page. Obviously, I could have used a pencil to sketch, but I'm not really doing anything too crazy. I'm just outlining what's already there. I just wasn't sure how much I wanted to outline and what parts are behind other parts, so I'm using a pretty fine tip to get a good idea, and then later I'll go back in and thicken up the lines. I did a few tests and found that Ohuhu liners are one of the few that I have that don't smear when alcohol markers are used over them. And that's what I'm going to use next, so I really didn't want to make a big mess. For the alcohol markers, I started with the bottom, just filling in the larger areas and going over some of the dangly bits. I wanted to brighten some of the colors and define some of the shapes a little bit more. I tried to keep the printing showing through, creating a little bit of color variation. But I also added additional layers of marker in some spots to build up some of the darker areas. As I was adding color to the bottom, I was better able to tell what areas looked sparse and where I wanted to add more. But honestly, I pretty much went over everything except the barely there grays. Those can be shadows. For the bell of the jellyfish, I started to add color to areas that had almost no color and looked white. But then other areas looked really light in comparison, so I would add color to those too. And I pretty much ended up coloring over 99% of it. I did stick with the same colors though, just a darker version. Now that that's done, I'm going to go back in and thicken up the line work. Starting with these panels on the jellyfish, I added some chevron-y things to add a little bit of interest. For the borders, I went mostly black with little dots of color peeking through. Kind of like that chameleon I did a while back. I gave the bottom a nice fat curvy border and some vertical lines, and then I added more chevron lines because I felt like it wasn't detailed enough. Art, at least art that I'm creating, is so weird to me sometimes that I can feel like something is missing in a piece, but half the time I have no idea what it is that's missing. I'm sure there's a totally science-y reason for that, but to me, it's just strange. For the little dingle-dangles, I used different size pens to give a little bit of variation on the little tiny details. My favorite part is these little ball garland-looking parts. They kind of remind me of the pull chain on a lamp. This could have been a lamp, like one of those glass Tiffany lamps. Someone else do that right now. I thought that I would be done after this step, but I was wrong. After staring at it for about a day, it was looking kind of dull to me, so I added some tiny details here and there with a white paint pen. Again, why does such a tiny thing make such a big difference in my mind? But now it's for real done. It somehow looks less like a jellyfish to me now. Like I'm still seeing Tiffany lamp or like one of those second line umbrellas from New Orleans. But whatever this is, I actually do really like how this page came out. This next page I chose because it's super ugly. I looked at this so many times when flipping through the book and I just couldn't get an idea for it. So I just kept turning it around and looking at it from different angles until finally I saw like a cup with smoke coming out of it. Like a magic cup. Because the overall color of this page is kind of poopy, I'm going to use some alcohol markers to change it up a little bit. Since there is a little bit of purple on the page, I went with purple, blue, and red. And I started with a super light version of each color, going over the whole area. Then I used a slightly darker marker to shade, and the darkest marker in that color to add swirly details. The printed picture already looked so much like the smoke to me that I'm really just sort of following the actual picture and just tinting it a little bit. Now, because I wanted this cup to be like a magical chalice or goblet, I wanted it to be shiny. And the only way I could think to make it shiny was with paint markers. So I also decided to use them on the smoke to tie the two together. But I think this was a mistake. I don't know if it's the colors I chose or the fat tips, but I just really don't like the way these swirls came out. Actually, in hindsight, I think it's just the swirls themselves that I don't like. They just look too cartoony. Also, the stupid blue marker diarrheaed right in the middle of a swirl. I tried to wait for it to dry, but I'm not a patient person, so it does bite me in the butt later on. I tried to detail the goblet by adding more colors and outlines and details, but the more I added, the more it looked like a little kid art project. Ugh, this is like super disappointing, because I had been putting off this page for so long because I didn't like it, and then I thought I had this great idea, and I had a pretty clear vision of what I wanted it to look like, but obviously no idea how to actually achieve that, and now it just looks like butt. I need someone to redo this way better and send me a picture. Please. For the sake of closure. Here's the next page that I'm going to do, and full disclosure, a lot of the original printing gets covered. But the essence of it is there at the end. I think this page is supposed to look like flowers, but to me they kind of look like butterflies. If you squint. Hard. Since they're the blobbiest butterflies ever, I'm going to sort of map them out before I ever add any detail. That one looks like a bow tie. I'm using paint markers for this, and I'm sort of reshaping them a bit and adding spots that aren't actually there. Because I want them to be recognizable as butterflies. I don't want a repeat of my melted goldfish from that other video. After I got the basic shapes laid down, I used other colors to add in some details and make them more colorful. Now, like I said, I am covering up a lot of the printing, which some people might think is sort of cheating, or not how the book is supposed to be used. But I just wanted to. Maybe it's not the point of the book to add so much. Maybe it seems like it's changing it too much. But I feel like these pages give me a jumping off point, like somewhere to start to turn them into something else. So I use them more as inspiration pages rather than a strictly line art challenge. And honestly, I think that's what art is all about. Regardless of how much I like to make fun of and criticize myself, I don't actually think there are really that many hard and fast rules when it comes to making art. This is what I wanted to do, and I had a really good time doing it. Now, my small community of subscribers are genuinely the sweetest and most non-judgmental people out there. And I very rarely get anything resembling a rude comment. But I know a lot of people think that they can't do art because they can't do it the way other people do, or someone else said that you're supposed to do it like this. But who cares? As long as you're enjoying it, do whatever the hell you want. Listen to me. I am old and wise. Maybe I shouldn't say that I'm old and wise right before I show you this next part. So these butterflies are obviously flying amongst and resting on something. And to me, that something is corn. I don't know, it looked like corn to me and I thought it was funny. And like a lot of ideas that I have, if it makes me laugh, I have to do it, even if it makes no sense. And I think I did a good job on the corn, considering I've never drawn corn before. It looks cute. I mean, the stalks and leaves are another story, but I'm going to take the focus away from them next anyway. I'm going to add some lining to these butterflies, but not with this liner, because it doesn't get along with the paint and it's looking a little gray. So instead I'm going to use a paint marker. This poor paper, man, it's really fighting for its life. But the black details just really make the butterflies pop and help them kind of stand out from the corn. It also helped to sort of fix some of the weird shapes that some of them had. I'm not sure that anyone will agree, but I genuinely love this page. This bow tie guy is so cute. I actually really want to make a painting of him all by himself. I also really like this swirly girly over here. Butterflies on corn is still hilarious to me, and this was probably the most relaxing of all of the pages that I've done. Plus, I love the way it came out so bright and colorful. The last page that I had time for was this one, and this ends up being my favorite page out of all of them. This obviously looks like a field and the sky up here, but rather than outline or emphasize the flowers, what I'm going to do instead is add something to it. And because it's October, well, it will be October when you're seeing this, I'm going to add something spooky. What is spooky that lives in a field? A scarecrow. Okay, it's not the spookiest thing ever, but just go with me on this. I wanted something that would match the vibe of the art that's already there, so I'm fully working off of a reference that I found. I did not invent this guy. He is not mine. I'm just borrowing him. I'm going to use colored pencils for this, and I started with the lightest colored area for this one so that I wouldn't have to try and go over other colors later. Colored pencils don't work the greatest on this paper. It's just slightly too smooth and they don't really grip that well. These were nice Prismacolor pencils, and I still had a hard time covering up the color on the paper. Eventually, I was able to put enough layers down to mostly cover the blue. The shirt in the reference photo is plaid, and I really liked the way it looked, but this was so time consuming to do. Plus, the white wasn't even trying to cover up the blue. But I kept going, and once I got the first layer down, I was able to go back in and darken it up. But here's what really helped. Normally, I would add all my lining at the end, but in the reference, the lines are really loose and sketchy, and a lot of the shadows are done with black. So I wanted to do the completed sections now so that I could see where I might need to add more color. And this just really took it to the next level. Like, it made all of the colors and shapes look so intentional. I mean, they were intentional because that's what I was trying to do, but now it has less of that, I hate it because I know that I drew it. That probably makes absolutely no sense to anyone but me. For the rest of this, I continued to work in small sections, which is not how I usually work at all, but it sort of made sense in my head. Does anyone else have like a very specific order of operations that they use when it comes to art? I always want to color everything in rainbow order, like all of my reds first, and then all of the oranges, etc. I usually fight my urge to do that because it would be a nightmare to watch. You can really tell how stubborn this paper is when it comes to pencils with this jack-o'-lantern. Even this orange wasn't covering up the printing no matter how many layers I added. But again, the black really saved the day, because once the lining and shading is on there, I don't even notice the blue showing through. I don't really think I'm that great at drawing, like I can't just draw something from memory, but I will toot my own horn and say that I think I'm pretty good at copying. Even that came with a lot of practice, but he looks pretty good. Except when it comes to hands, because those gloves are all kind of weird looking. They are hanging down like that in the reference, but what is going on with the dimensions? He's got ogre hands. But this is him done. This is not my usual style at all, but I love the way it came out. It totally fits in with the picture that was already on the page. And it doesn't look like I just slapped two ideas together. I also love that he's off-center to one side. Like, I might actually frame this and hang it up for the fall. So that's all for this week. What do you think? Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.